when it comes to life, in order to really understand it for what it actually is, you have to view it objectively, meaning that in that regard, you can't see life as religion being one section of life. Now, the good aspects of religion are valid. That's what we need to say. First, we have to reduce, in order to get down to what life actually is about, to get back to reality, being that we're so far removed from it due to our embellishment and our emotions and we're delusional. And that's due to entertainment and our lust for excitement. It's removed us completely from reality. So in order to get back to that, in order to find out what is really true, to cut the noise, we have to reduce all the froth, such as any superstitions, werewolves, vampires, people coming back to life after rigor mortis has well established magic in terms of wizards and witches, and things of that nature. We have to reduce all those things, reduce life down to the reality of the logic that we know of. We have to remove our biases, our biases. We have to be brave. We have to be courageous. Remember, a characteristic of the truth is that it hurts. We can't expect it to be what we want it to be, though that is our tendency. When you learn 2 + 2 = 4, no matter your emotion towards it, there was no denying what logic conveyed, that 2 items plus another 2 items would equal 4 items. Now, what I will concede to you there is that it would be 4 individual items. And the notion of 4 on its own can be seen as a notion that could be called. I'll give you that aspect of it. But that's neither here nor there. Now, once we get to the fact of everything is to be seen as one big macrocosm that's all affecting each other and playing on each other, cross parallels, contradictions, etc., in their relations to each other. Everything's relative, such as science, philosophy, religion, and all these other astrology, age, and esoteric views. All those things are all to be viewed as one thing altogether. Remove our need for capitalism, or our desire for capitalism and our desires. When you remove our desires out of it, take that lens out of it, that tint from off of your vision, you start to see a clearer picture that shows you that there is really a moral foundation, that it starts there. For us to be a social species, even in our disagreements that we have, we are still united in them. We agree to disagree, whether it is through debate, through argument. I'm not talking about argument in terms of trying to come to a truth or further a conversation. Instead, we argue to hold positions, to simply take and prove how stubborn we are, how adamant we are at holding those positions. That's that doesn't see that's counterintuitive to me. That would seem unintelligent to you would think to everyone else who claims that they're who who claims himself to be an intelligent being as well. So first, we have to recognize that yes, there is a moral foundation. All social species have one. So even in our disagreement, there is the fact that we are united in that endeavor of disagreeing. Another thing to demonstrate that there is a moral foundation is the very fact that there is a society. There could not be a society without a moral foundation. It's the same reason why I say, if you look at any other social species, the very fact that they are a social species, that they can even be around each other, regardless in how they interact, that would be their moral foundation. What we actually do is our moral foundation as it is, but the correct moral foundation. Now that's another thing we have to decide: do we want to be right or do we want to be wrong? Because in everything else, we want our phones to work correctly, we want our cars to work, our vehicles to work correctly. So I would have to assume that in these debates, it's clear when we are adamant in our positions that that is what we are trying to convey to others, is that we are right. The notion of being upright, we have the notion of being upright. Then there's the notion of being righteous. So it is clear that humanity if the goal is intelligence, has a duty to be in the right. With that said, I don't like the way that word is used in terms of political parties, because that suggests that the party that uses that word, it automatically lends them some element, some degree, some percentage of credibility just by using that word. I just wanted to say that as a little caveat. Now, moving back on to morals, sins, crime, and consequence. Crime with a moral, let's go back to morals. Now in terms of moral foundation, you can start it off. The very fundamental moral foundation is do unto others as you would like to be done unto you. All of us seek pleasure, none of us like pain. Therefore, do not torture another person. If you do not want torture, because no, it's not even if you do not want torture, because you don't want torture. Do not be evil to other people because you would not like other people to be evil to you. Do not ignore the plight of others because you wouldn't like others to ignore the plight of yourself. You see what I'm saying? It's a reciprocity. There's reciprocity there. That's the key element in being a part of a social species. It's not about the individual. While our society purports individuality, and we have the concept of individualism and self-interest, these things are secondary in nature. If you think about it, we are individual members of a group. What do they purport in society all the time? Teamwork. There's no I in team. And as members of a social species, the same inherently follows from that fundamental tenet or nuance within nature. Nature didn't set us as individuals, or we would not feel lonely. Nature did not set us as individuals, or we would not have a mob mentality when within a group. Nature did not set us as individuals, or we would not experience mental defects after a duration in solitary confinement, and so on and so forth. There's plenty of proof out there to prove that we are members of a social species. Common sense proof. So where we get this notion of individualism from is simply out of a selfish desire of that's how we want life to be. That's not dealing with life on life's terms. That's trying to dictate the terms to life. And as we know, we do not create ourselves nature. We are born of nature. Nature is sovereign. And sometimes we seem to mix that up as well as to who is really in charge here. Yes, what's happened here is that we've desired control since the beginning, finding ourselves so fearful and in a wilderness. Early man found themselves fearful in a wilderness of things that they didn't understand. Can you imagine that, being among the first generations of humans and having completely no idea of what was going on? All these wild animals and wild creatures out just circling. Then there's the night. You have to find fire. So we've been seeking control all this time. That's what's driven humanity all this time, is control. We all, that's a part of this life experience. That's a key element of life experience, is to seek control. Control and to seek control are two elements within one, if you will. Because in that way, it drives the narrative of the game, if you will. It drives us to, that's how necessity sparks invention. Because that invention allows us some semblance of control. And that control allows us some influence on an outcome within the future possibilities. Now, when you're being that you get that control already, you do already have control from the beginning. You're allowed to kick your legs. You're allowed to voice that you need some milk from your mother's breast. And then you learn how to control your body a little bit more till you can sit, crawl, stand, walk, climb, run, and speak well, even communicate fluently, more and more. So we're developing. And that's how the same thing with the mind as well. And then once you've developed, reached a point, you're never fully finished developing mentally. You may be finished developing in your proficiency in using your appendages, your arms and legs, and wiggling your toes and speaking, or what have you. But you're never finished developing. You're not finished developing your mind. Mentally, you're always in process of development. The algorithm continues. The saga continues, as they say. And it is there that you should notice that, okay, if there's value, I can do things that can create good outcomes that benefit me mortally, in which I can survive, I feel good about the action, such as something helpful to others, something that benefits others. That's the reason why even a serial killer, when they help others, gets a good feeling from that, because he's a member. He may not recognize it, but he's a member of a social species. That's the reason why we're intended to be helping each other. That's the reason why I don't even like the idea of a savior or a central figure in religion, because it suggests it suggests to those who the practitioners of it that they aren't to care for their fellow human being. It almost relieves them of their innate and inherent obligation to their fellow human being. Well, I don't have to do it. I don't have to save anyone. We have a savior for that, or we have a central figure for that. No, just like the ants, just like a community of ants have to look out for each other. I don't know if you ever see the army ants going across a bridge. That's what we are supposed to be doing each other. There's not supposed to be a society of Cain and Abel. We're human beings. We're a united species, whether we like it or not. So these things are things that you're being judged on as you go through life, moment to moment. Your actual choices that you have to make, choices that are impactful, that bother you later, that you know you should have done differently, or later on you say, man, I'm glad I did that way. That was the right way to do it. That you can pat yourself on the back and know that you did the actual right thing morally. And that's the thing, you have to do it morally. That's the reason for regrets. It's to remind you how to do things better than that. To remind you not to do something again that you did wrong. This is about improvement. That's what life experience is about. Like, as I've said in other videos, life experience is a behavior modification technology. Notice everything's developing. We are to be improving. It doesn't matter that we have desires and we want to YOLO. They live once, live life to the fullest. That's not what life's about. That's not what life's about. Do the logic. Is that what life's about? That's what we want life to be about. But when you combine all the factors, reduce them down to their actual fundamental elements and characteristics, the train's going by. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. You will find that life is a quest. Life is literally a journey. It is a journey of improvement. We are to learn. There are lessons to be learned in life in each moment if you take the time to examine your life, which it is incumbent on you to do. Because as I stated before, with the factors such as death and value, the presence of value at all, it shows you that we are being evaluated on our actions, on the things that we choose to do and not do, our actions and non-actions. And those actions, being individual members of a social species, are first moral, and being that our minds are our number one tool in life, we are also being judged in how we use those, our actions, what we use our minds to order our bodies to do within the moral code that nature fundamentally has for us. And these are things that we are to recognize, identify, and articulate. There was no book that just dropped and says, hey, here's what life's about. That, as well as our emotions, is all to distract. It's a diversion tactic within the game. Remember, the game is our enemy, not just our friend. The same way how our mind, remember, our enemies are ourselves, other human beings, other animals, other creatures, other species within the life experience, and the game itself, the environment, the platform. Those are our enemies, but they're our four enemies, but they are also at the same time simultaneously our aids, our tools, our helpers in the game. We are supposed to also use these things to help us in the game. So it's, in order to move through life, you have to know how to discern. You have to know how to differentiate good value from bad value, from positive from negative. What is actually worth doing? What is actually beneficial? And what seems worth doing? And what seems beneficial? Meaning it is fundamentally bad for you to do. Meaning that it will count against you. It's consider it like an athlete. You're an athlete within a sport, because that is what this is. That's what life experience really is. It is a sport. It is a sport of all sports. It's a part race. It's a part following orders. It's a part knowing how to give orders. Being that you're a leader of yourself, and you're also an influence to other members of the social species. So you also have to be an exemplar. So you have to also demonstrate and practice living in morality. Now, when I say morality, we should, and I also said that we weren't born, humanity did not emerge from on the earth with a set of instructions. There was no manual, but there is a manual that exists. And it is not the Bible, it's not the Quran, it's not the 8 steps of enlightenment or the 12 steps from Alcoholics Anonymous or what have you. It's a combination of all wisdom within life, which means whether it be in religion, whether it be in science, whether it be in philosophy, whether it even be in evil, because I find, whether we want to admit it or not, that some people that I generally have disdain or disagreement with, I find that sometimes they say some things that I agree with, whether it be the smallest percentage of time or not. I find I'm never 100% in disagreement with someone that I am generally in disagreement or have disdain for. And conversely, I find that some people that I have an affinity for or that I generally agree with, at times they will say something that I won't agree with or that is completely idiotic. You see what I'm saying? So what we need to realize is that there is wisdom all around us, and it is within everyone. So no one is to be dismissed. You see what I'm saying? We aren't supposed to be just looking for the next Einstein or the next Descartes or the next Socrates. No, wisdom exists in all of us. I heard Jordan Peterson, which half the time I disagree with him, half the time I agree with some of the things he says. But either way, the man is at least trying. He's a thinker. I heard him say one time that there's not an idea that a human being hasn't already thought of. There's not an idea that you could think of that another human being has not already thought of. There's too many human beings on the planet that we've all thought of the same ideas at some point. Well, I thought to myself, well, that's great then. That's another indication of us being a social species. That's another proof of us being a social species, first off. And hello, that's also another proof of telepathy, a form of telepathy. If you think about it, all communication is telepathy. In fact, that's why I say and I assert that all of life is one big telepathy, which is why I can say, espouse the things that I do with the assertions that I do with confidence, because these things can be rationalized and then realized. That's what our imagination is for. That's why we have this television screen in our heads, within ourselves. It's a tool that is to be used. We are not to be observing television. Nature's a classroom within itself. We're to be observing nature and to figure out why we are here. Nature can be all of the nuances and what we call the supernatural in life can be rational. That is what our calculator. It is no accident that we have a calculator within our minds. That our minds are calculators. That's no accident. That it can calibrate and weigh things, and it's no accident that the cosmos works the same way. Both are self-actualizing. So when you take into account all those factors, as well as all the other machinations in life, you realize that life is definitely based on a scoring system. What you are doing is being, you're receiving points, receiving and losing points. You're gaining and losing points based on your decisions in life, based on our decisions in life. Each of our decisions, and as well as collectively, on both levels, and everything's being done in a dual set. Meaning that you're being judged in how you perform individually, and you're being judged as well in how society overall performs relative to the morals and its collective intellect, and relative to you and your performance that contributes to that, and how it relates back to you. So first you have to rationalize all of these things. Now, I think we've long established that there's a moral foundation, but due to our need to continuously feed the beast known as capitalism, we have to constantly blur the lines of moral foundation and question and say, is there really a moral foundation, when clearly there is one? How can there be a social species if there's no moral foundation? Anywhere. How can any social species exist? How can it even be considered a social species if there is not a moral foundation? Can someone please enlighten me? Am I looking too? Is it more complicated than that, really? Because I just don't see how it could be. That seems just too simple to me. So having established that there has to be a moral foundation, the next thing is to articulate it. And that is, treat others as you would want to be treated, and then you build from there. All the morals follow and flow from there. the next thing you move on to is crime. Crime and what religion calls sin should not be viewed as two different things. The only reason why they're viewed as two different things goes back to, again, the beast known as capitalism. In our justice system, if you notice, our laws are not moral. Our laws are more, if anything, just a set of controls. A set of controls that are there to protect the assets of the rich, as well as the rich themselves, and exploit the rest of us. Is this not what you see? I mean, we can look through history on this. Hey, Lacey, what's going on? You know what I mean? Is this not what you see? We could go through history on this. So, in those terms, that's the reason why law. If you look at the justice system, it's always you can. The person who has the most money has a better chance within court, no matter what his charges. He can have murder, while the person with a misdemeanor but has no money, no resources, financial resources, that person might end up getting a consequence when it comes to our version of court, our version of a scoring system. See, what we do in nature is we're mimicking everything. Our math mimics nature because nature is multiplying, adding, and dividing and subtracting. Look at everything in nature. Same thing with our Justice Department. Our Justice Department mimics what nature is doing. We see that there's a scoring system out there. That's the reason why we came up with the whole notion of hierarchy. We see that there are gradations, levels, scales, ratios. In fact, that's what our mind is. That's where we come up with the word rationalize. We're constantly weighing things. Put all the elements together. Is this all coincidence? And I told you coincidence is a result of two logical processes. So even it is not a coincidence. There's no such thing as chance. All possibilities are predetermined already. All of time has always existed as possibilities. And after possibilities, once conditions are met, they become outcomes. As we speak right now, there's a range of possible words I could say next. Kalamazoo. You know what I mean? I could say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Like, I can just pick out words, but they're not random. Why aren't they random? You know why they're not random? First off, because I already have a group of words predetermined in my mind to pick from, and those words are limited because they can only be the words that I already know. I can't just come up with a word that I don't know. I can create a word, but it wouldn't be a word because you wouldn't recognize it. No one would. So is it a word? That's not a word. So you see what I'm saying? There's a limit. It seems that we have choice, but we're limited. Even the government is limited in the choices that it can do. That and is what it is to look at things from an objective view and realize that nature has limited our abilities, our capabilities, though it appears that we have abundance choice. Like Sartre, the Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, asserted back in the after World War II times or during World War II times. No, we are not. Our problem isn't that we have abundant choice. What it is the appearance. Our problem is that we are overwhelmed by the appearance of abundance, but really we are limited in choice. We cannot fly. That is, so we are limited. We cannot run as fast as other animals. We don't have as keen a sense as some other animals. We cannot grasp each moment of society around us in 100% high definition as our TV, our televisions now suggest. Because as you can see, just like with the difference between the high definition television and a normal television, you see the difference in the clarity. It's more. It seems to convey more of the information that's going on in that image, and that's the same thing. Our senses, it doesn't grasp all of the data that's going on around us. They're not designed to. That is the reason why life, if you notice, we can see life differently. We experience life differently than how it actually is playing out fundamentally. Another indication that we're in a game. We live under rules, the natural laws, instincts. Another indication that we're within a game, within a challenge, a deliberate challenge, that we are in a prison of behavior modification type of technology, and that our bodies are technologies themselves. Now, in terms of sin and crime, we have to reconcile the two, because I don't like to use the word sin because it invokes religion, and religion invokes religion has rang so hollow for so long that it has lost its impact to anyone of any seriousness in thinking. Only the emotionally delusional still subscribe to religion with any, and I'm not trying to insult anyone, but I mean, we're having an honest discussion here, an adult conversation. Since no one else in the world seems to want to have adult conversations, I decided to make videos that do. Yeah, religious people are just, they're hopeful, and nothing's wrong with that. I get that, being hopeful, but that's not intelligent. And you have a mind for a reason. Religious people are like, they're the most robotic of us robots. Now, we do have some semblance of choice, or we wouldn't be being evaluated. There wouldn't be any value. There wouldn't be any presence of value whatsoever. So you want to do the right things. You don't want to do things that are wrong. And what do I mean by that? The things that each day, that each moment that you learn a lesson from. Things that you notice the lessons from in your day. Remember, each day we learn something new. Well, we need to start writing those things down. Make note of them, because they're not there by accident. Remember, there are no accidents. There's no chance. There's no coincidence. There's no random. At best, it is only an order that is outside of human understanding. But objectively, it is an order. It is a set order, a set pattern, no different from any other predictable pattern of human understanding. That is the only reason why it's random. It's because it's outside of human understanding. We might as well call it supernatural. You know what I mean? It would be the same thing, an anomaly. But the only reason why, it just means that it's outside of a pattern that we do not yet understand, that is so far as of yet outside of our grasp, and it is meant to be outside of our grasp, because remember, we're in our game, and the game is also fighting against us. It is part our friend to be used to beat it, but while we're trying to beat it, it's been designed to fight against us every step of the way. So sins, when we're talking about sins, we need to come up with another word for sins. Maybe we should just call it overall crime. But remember, when we say crime, it kind of supports this tyrannical justice system that protects and supports the rich that we have in place now. So maybe we need to do away with both of those words and come up with, we'll go with wrongs for right now. Innate wrongs. Let's go with that just for right now till we come up with something better. So you don't want to do innate wrongs, because in terms of consequence, you see the things that can happen to human beings on Earth. This is how you should view consequence after, when it's time to be judged, when it's time to see this, your scorecard, when it's time to see the ledger, the checkbook, all the accounts that you've written, all your actions are accounted for. And it looks like a Walmart receipt or like a scroll, a long papyrus of all the actions that you've done. If that account's not balanced or better, you can expect consequence, and that consequence not only to be swift, not only to be fair, but it will be unforgiving. It will be unforgiving. It will be the worst thing that you can imagine. And the worst thing that I could think of is not hell. It's not drowning or burning. That's a mortal fear. Those are mortal fears. You have to think as an intellect, because that's what we are innately. We're just geniuses. You have to think we are exactly like the creature, the being, or the beings, that came up with the cosmos, that came up with this construct in the first place, the construct of life experience, mortal life experience in the first place. We're being punished for violating some rule outside of the cosmos. That is the reason why we're in here in this behavior modification construct known as the universe, known as life experience, known as existence. What I say should be better termed as mortal existence. Now, what I want to say about things that need to be figured out, even though we can't see them, I want you to think of, no one can see your thoughts, but you know those things are real. No one can see gravity, but we know gravity is real. No one can see the wind, but we know the wind is real. No one can see carbon monoxide. I don't even know if you can smell or taste it, but we know it's real. No one can see a few other things. I got them listed down. But I'm just doing, this is just informal, casual, freestyling, talking right now. But we know those things are real, and that's the same thing it is with our moral foundation. We can't see them, but the same way how we articulated gravity is the same way how we need to articulate the moral foundation, because we know that it's real. We know that we do not want things to be done to us. Certain things to be done to us that would be painful, that would be torturous, that would be evil. So therefore it is absolutely incumbent, there is no question around this, that is the treatment that we are to show others. There is no one that is person that is special and above everyone else. Now, there can be people that put themselves below everyone else, and there are people who try to put themselves above everyone else. That is supposed to be, that's moral. That's common sense. That's ethical. That's intelligent. This thing about putting people ahead of us because they have wealth, or because they say that they have providence from God to be ahead of us, they should be leading. That's nonsensical. That's stupidity. That's how you end up with guys like Donald J. Trump as the president. Someone that you sit in your living room and think to yourself, how is this man smarter, or how is this man richer, financially richer, and in the president and being the president of the so-called most powerful nation on earth, and you're in your living room knowing that you're smarter than this man. Knowing that you're smarter than this man. At best, he's more conniving than you are. But that should give you an indication that to me right there is telling of what society has devolved to. And I'm not saying that Hillary Clinton would be much better. What I'm saying is, why aren't we questioning the system entirely? Enough with this rich needs to be dominating the poor stuff. I've looked through history. It's holding us back. It's actually, if I can use the word, I'm not insulting any group of people, but it's retarded human progress. It's retarded our development. It's retarded evolution. It's actually keeping us in stasis. The only thing that is progressing is their comforts, is their power, is their control. That's what's been developing and progressing and evolving in society. Let's look at it from the Bible times. Look from the Quran. Look at human behavior from then. Let's not. We don't have to stop at Greece and Greek or anything. Let's go all the way to Sumeria and Egypt. These are all unnecessary. These are correctable behaviors. But when you have a system in place that basically prods and encourages you and rewards you for being nefarious, for being mischievous, for being disingenuous, then of course people are going to act appropriately. People adjust. We adapt. We're an adapting species. That's human nature at its most fundamental. So the fact that they can manipulate an adaptable species does not surprise me. In fact, there's no genius in that whatsoever. What, if anything, it's telling. It calls into question the elites, the so-called elites, level of intellect, of intelligence. I call it into question because if you're telling me that that your level of intellect is to show us how much you can manipulate the population, how good you are at that, that's not a talent. When the population is naturally an adaptable species. Do you really want me to give you a standing ovation for that? Do you deserve billions and trillions of